The desert was not empty. It only appeared so to those who expected abundance to be loud. At dawn, when the sky bled from indigo into gold, the land revealed its truth. Life existed here, but it survived by knowing what to let go of. Aisha arrived in the desert with a suitcase heavier than it should have been. It wasn't filled with clothes or books or tools for travel. It was filled with the things she could not leave behind. Old expectations, guilt that had fermented over years, the quiet shame of dreams postponed for later, the echo of voices that told her who she should be instead of asking who she was. She had come because the city had grown unbearable, not because it was cruel, but because it was crowded with noise, with urgency, with endless accumulation. There was always more to want, more to carry, more to become. And yet, the more she gathered, the smaller she felt. The desert offered no such promises. On her first day, she met an old botanist named Rahim, who lived in a weathered shack at the edge of the dunes. He studied plants most people overlooked, thorny, dry, unimpressive at a glance. "You came to see nothing?" he asked, amused, when she told him why she was there. "I came to see how anything survives here," Aisha replied. Rahim smiled. "Then you came to learn how to release." Each morning, he led her into the desert. The sun was merciless, the ground unforgiving. But Rahim moved with reverence, kneeling beside plants that looked barely alive. "This one," he said, pointing to a low, twisted shrub, "drops its leaves the moment they become too expensive to keep." "Expensive?" Aisha asked. "In water, in energy, in life." He explained how desert plants shed what they cannot sustain, leaves, branches, even flowers, without mourning. They do not cling to what once was useful. Survival here is not about endurance alone. It is about discernment. Aisha thought of her own life, the friendships she maintained out of obligation, the ambitions inherited rather than chosen, the anger she carried because she believed letting go meant losing. At night, she unpacked her suitcase slowly. Each object reminded her of a version of herself she no longer recognized. Letters never sent, clothes for a body she used to have, notes filled with plans that belonged to someone else's timeline. She did not throw anything away at first. She simply looked, acknowledged, named. That was the desert's first lesson. Nothing is released before it is seen. Days passed. The heat softened her resistance. The silence loosened her grip. She noticed how desert plants conserved their strength, how roots ran deep instead of wide, how growth happened invisibly before ever appearing above ground. One afternoon, Rahim showed her a rare flower blooming from cracked earth. "It waited years for this," he said, "but it bloomed only because it had already let go of everything unnecessary." Aisha knelt beside it. The flower was small, fragile, but unmistakably alive. It had not bloomed despite the desert, it bloomed because of it. That night, she finally emptied her suitcase. She left behind the need to prove her worth through exhaustion, the belief that suffering was a prerequisite for meaning, the fear that letting go would make her insignificant. In their place, she kept only what nourished her: curiosity, tenderness, patience. When she left the desert weeks later, she carried less, but she stood taller. Back in the city, nothing had changed. The noise remained, the urgency persisted. But Aisha moved differently now. She pruned her life with intention, released conversations that drained her, goals that demanded self-erasure, possessions that anchored her to past versions of herself. Like the desert flora, she learned that growth was not about accumulation, it was about precision. And somewhere deep within her, beneath the heat, beneath the loss, beneath the quiet, something began to bloom. Not loudly, not extravagantly, but enough to survive, enough to thrive.